All right, I'd like to call to order the Village of Ashwaubenon Park and Rec Board Meeting for Tuesday, August 19th, 2025. Roll call, please.
Chris Zergle.
Here.
Tracy Flukie.
Here.
Ron Mowerman.
Here.
Nancy Mackey.
Here.
Dean Hess.
Here.
Jonathan Miller.
Here.
Mark Castoni.
Here. All right, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, and please keep in mind our brave men and women are help keeping us safe and free here and abroad. Action on the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I had a question.
Sure.
According to the minutes from last month, we had some items for the next agenda, the Sherwood Forest Porta Potty and the Packland Trail map, and also something that was asked to bring back off the capital project submittals. And I didn't see that in the agenda for this month, and being fairly new to the board, I wasn't sure how that transpires.
Well, the Sherwood Forest Porta Potty is really a budgetary item, so what I will be doing is putting that into the 2026 budget request to Village Board about putting a porta potty. I mean, there's nothing to really approve or not approve. We want to do it, but I've got a budget for it. So we're looking at doing that for 2026, Ron.
Okay, well, it was just like I say, it said it was gonna be a item for this agenda, and it wasn't on it, so.
Yep. I was gonna ask that too.
Okay, anything else? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Action on the minutes from the Park Board meeting, July 15, 2025.
Motion to approve the minutes from the July 15th meeting.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Comments from the public must be limited to items not on the agenda, must state name and address, limited to 5 minutes. Board's role is to listen and not discuss the item. Personnel issues cannot be discussed, nor individuals named, and the board is not able to take action at this meeting. Anybody here to discuss anything not on the agenda? Nobody on the online? All right, we'll move on. 7, acceptance of written reports, Park, Rec, and Forestry.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Oh, no,
I'm sorry.
nobody's got anything? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll second.
All right, motion to approve the written reports. All in favor, say aye.
Can I just ask one quick question? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was gabbing over here. I'm sorry. Just a question on the parks part of it. It talks about the Phragmites being sprayed, and it says that Cabela's is going to do the work. But are they going to do the work, or is that just a typo in there and it should be Santec?
Stantec has already sprayed in front of Cabela's.
Yeah.
And then they're gonna be coming back in a week or two and doing an area in Argonne Park.
Okay.
Where there's also Phragmites back on towards Highway 41, where our boardwalk kind of loops around, so. I'm trying to see where you're seeing that. Hold on.
It's the second to last item.
Yeah, it starts with the staff sprayed, the Phragmites, and then we were looking at having Cabela's come in within several weeks. I'm assuming that's not Cabela's coming in, it's Santec.
That's a typo on my part. Stantec came
Okay.
in, is the one coming in.
Okay, I kind of figured that, but I just wanted to make sure that, I
Yep.
don't know if
No,
Cabela's was
Cabela's
doing
is not doing that.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I
We did,
figured-
we did apply for a grant through Cabela's to do some additional invasive species work.
Oh,
in front, to help defray some of that cost. But I've not heard whether or not anything's come through yet.
Okay. Okay, that was it. Thank you.
All right, anything else on this? If not, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 8A, consider, discuss, act on the Village of Ashwaubenon's field rental prices. Rex?
Okay, the last time, well, we do a lot of field rentals to a lot of groups through, whether it be private organizations, majority of them are youth organizations renting our fields, so on and so forth. And we really haven't updated pricing in quite a long time. We've always been affordable. A lot of the area municipalities have also been affordable, and we've tried to, be somewhat close to them. In the last couple of years, though, obviously with the economies the way they are and the increased cost of doing business and taking care of the fields and electrical lighting costs and whatnot, everyone is starting to raise their rates somewhat. And so what David has done is he's kind of done a survey of area municipalities, surrounding municipalities, finding out what their costs are for those types of rentals. And you've got a little bit of a spreadsheet in your packet right now. And he's just going to present to you some of the findings and potential recommendation for us to use in the 2026 budget request.
All right, so as Rex said, I did put together a spreadsheet for us. I tried to pull some of the numbers from other municipalities close to us. When looking at field rental prices, it's not always easy because it seems like every place does it a little bit differently. So just kind of try to gauge where everybody was at and then see what adjustment needed to be made to our prices. As Rex said, it's been quite a while since we've adjusted those rates. I included attachment that says updated 2022, but if you actually look at our one that says updated 2013, if you go through like our folders that we have, it's actually the same prices as the 2022 ones. So we all know what the economy and inflation's been like just these last few years, and if you go back that far, it's quite a bit of difference. So obviously, our wages for maintenance guys have gone up. For baseball and softball fields, when you start factoring in chalk, diamond dry, those prices have gone up significantly. This year, we had a lot of burnt out light bulbs that needed to be replaced for field lights and for scoreboard lights. So all those things have different prices attached to them. So it was definitely time that we kind of took a look at it. And then as Rex mentioned, we also have been getting more demand for field rentals. With a lot of the private groups that have been coming in, we've been getting a lot more tournament requests. So I think it's definitely time to kind of take a step back and look at what we're charging per hour. Security deposits is something that we also adjusted in these proposed rates as well. And then we do have, I guess, some flexibility too within this format to kind of negotiate prices with the groups that we have a long-standing history with, whether it be like an FC Green Bay or ISA that have been renting for us for a number of years, so that we're not throwing things way off kilter for groups that have been good to work with. So this is more geared, I would say, towards new groups that are coming in or these specialized tournaments that are looking to our facility, since we do have such nice facilities here in Ashwaubenon. If you look at the price adjustments from the attachment from 2022 to the one proposed today, essentially we're going up $5 per hour per diamond. Scoreboard use, like I said, the cost of those lights have gone up, so we're looking to adjust that price by $5. Our tournament rental rate, we do give a discounted price for rentals if you're renting a certain amount of fields for a certain amount of time. Has gone up. If you notice, the softball and baseball field rental price for that is more expensive than the soccer price, but that's because the soccer price is based off a minimum of 2 fields. There's also a lot more time and effort that goes into prepping softball and baseball fields, so. And then just so you guys know how it works, when we do have a tournament, usually what we do is our maintenance staff will do like an initial field drag in the morning. They're not out there all day dragging the field between games, so it's more of an initial drag and just kind of getting them set up and going for the day.
And then they have access to the chalk for that day, or how does that work?
We've been, I think, pretty generous with access to some of that stuff. I guess we did just have Uncle Charlie's here a few weeks ago, and we did have basically inventory of chalk and diamond dry. And that money was, that for the stuff that they use, we took that out of their security deposit, so.
Typically, the chalk is paid for lining the fields, you know, on a per game basis. But
Yeah.
that's usually part of the overall rental fee is the use. So they have access to our chalker and we'll put in, you know, 5 or 10, depending on how many fields someone is renting, we'll allow that for chalk. The diamond dry, we charge them for.
Makes sense.
And that's where the security deposit comes in, where we would take that out of the security deposit, like for instance, with the tournament that we had a couple of weeks ago. You know, we didn't use a lot of diamond dry, but we still used some, and that was taken out of their security deposit.
Yeah, that's more, right,
Diamond dry can get dangerous too if it pouring and people just throw way too much on. You
Correct.
can do a lot of money quickly.
Yeah.
they, dump a whole bag on a puddle.
Yep.
Perfect, yeah. Did you ever, I don't see and I don't know how you would police it, I guess, but a community-based Ashwaubenon fee and then a non, I don't want to say get a little more, but I mean, going off of taxpayer dollars, like to give a break, like we do for the community center to say, you're a Ashwaubenon organization.
Well, I mean, that's what the co-sponsored organizations, I mean, the co-sponsors don't get charged anything, obviously. All the other organizations, I mean, they can always apply for co-sponsored status if they're Ashwaubenon based and want to abide by the Ashwaubenon co-sponsored policies. But all other organizations, really, if they're open, whether they've got Ashwaubenon residents or not, if they're open to everyone, they're considered a private, you know, like a youth, even, you know, nonprofit organization, and that's where those different rates come in.
I'm thinking of, we had a team, I don't want to say go rogue, but they didn't play under the AYB umbrella this year, but all their kids were Ashwaubenon, their coach was an Ashwaubenon,
Then it's unless they're co-sponsored right now, the way our policy states, they're a private organization.
Sure,
Versus nonprofit.
Okay.
It looked like one of the areas with the biggest discrepancies between what the different communities did was with the lights. So are we, with what we're looking at now, are we staying competitive with it when you consider the maintenance and everything that goes with it? Because do we know how recently some of these other communities changed their policy? Like, are we kind of making ourselves in line with what everybody else is doing? And then all of a sudden, they're all gonna meet and they're looking, going, whoa, this isn't nearly enough. So are we going to be covering ourselves?
I would say we don't have a ton of light usage, but there are times where lights are used. Obviously, it's not a whole entire day thing, but usually for a couple hours in the evening.
Especially as you get into fall. Obviously,
Yeah.
because it gets darker earlier.
I would say the challenge with pulling these numbers, I don't think field rental prices are necessarily a high priority for communities to look at.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of them were excited when I asked to kind of put together numbers and things like that. So more than likely, they'll probably kind of fall in line with what we're looking to do.
So we're kind of in the middle, but we're enough that we're not losing money on using lights.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's hard to quantify when you say losing money.
I know, I realize that.
You know, we're trying to cover, because a lot of our fields are, a lot of our adult leagues, you know, we have adult leagues on Monday nights and Tuesday nights that do use the lights because they're playing till 10, sometimes 11 o'clock at night. Our softball numbers, David's done a great job of bringing them in. We're one of the few that we've had softball numbers rise in the last couple of years versus go down. So I mean, we're using the lights quite a bit too.
But I know bulbs aren't cheap,
No, they're not. They're not, and electricity is not cheap,
and
so.
getting at them to replace them is not a matter of pulling out the 5-foot ladder and,
No, you have to have a company come in that has people that are certified to go up quite high.
70, 80 feet, yeah.
Yeah, 80 feet in the air and in a bucket to change those out, and they're big.
so will our light fees take all those things into consideration and are still,
Well, they're competitive. I'm not gonna say that we're gonna cover our costs on them. We're just trying to find out what other areas are, across the board and kind of be in line with the other municipalities. We know we need to increase the price, Nancy. We don't get a bill per, it's very difficult on a field light to get a handle on what it costs for a private rental.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because when we get the bill, it's for the full month, so it's all of our programs mixed in with all of the individual rentals. So we, have to try and figure that in a little bit
Yep.
too, for the overall billing costs, and really what we're going by is kind of across the board what the other agencies are charging.
okay. Just wanted to make sure it was enough.
I know, I get it.
Every little bit will, I guess, help towards that,
Yeah.
towards that cause, so.
Thank you.
When would these new rates go into effect? Would it be at the beginning of the year, or?
We would probably put them into effect January 1st, which is the new budget year. Well, yes, yeah, because none of these rates are advertised in our brochure, so we would put them into effect on January 1st.
And I don't think we're gonna get a whole lot of requests for these last few months. A lot of people would have already reached out to us for the most part to try to have a tournament or something special planned, so.
Is our philosophy to kind of, or do we have a philosophy, is kind of just be in the middle somewhere?
I think so. I mean, that's kind of what has always been our edict. I mean, for a lot of our park and recreation programs, Chris, it's always been told, we want to bring people into the village to keep our village vibrant. In fact, it's one of our objectives when we're looking at our smart growth plan and some of the other things, just bring people in and that, with people coming here, they'll be doing other things within the village. So it's always been make sure you cover and even during COVID, make sure you cover your expenses basically, and we're not necessarily, looking to make a ton of money. It certainly helps in some different areas if we do, but we're just looking to be competitive and bring people into the village to keep those opportunities and to keep it vibrant, basically.
Yeah, and we'll reap the,
Right.
Benefits
Like with
of-
the Uncle Charlie's tournament, I mean, we probably made a couple $1,000s on that tournament. But, that tournament had almost 70 teams, 75 teams, and probably over half of them were not within driving distance of Green Bay. Which means, where did they mostly stay? They stayed in Ashwaubenon. At a lot of the Ashwaubenon hotels, and probably a lot of them ate at the Ashwaubenon restaurants. And if there was any shopping, other than maybe going to Lambeau Field, a lot of it was probably done in Ashwaubenon. So the trickle effect on that, it's hard to quantify, but that's kind of what our edict has been, to our department for a lot of those types of events, which is the reason why we don't want to be so out of line with our field rental fees that they don't want to come here. We're trying to be competitive with the other municipalities.
yeah, no, it makes total sense, yeah, yep. All right. Any other questions on this matter? If everybody's comfortable, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to accept the rate increases.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. B, consider, discuss, act on report for Marina Trail concrete option.
Sure, so, when we talked about this at the last meeting, this is one of the items in the capital improvement plan. We had a fairly healthy discussion on Packerland Trail, Marina Trail, which one should be the priority, knowing there's probably not gonna be budget money to do. There's a lot of projects that we submit every year, because we've got a lot of great facilities. So the Marina Trail was one of the ones that we're looking at, and I think was in mostly favor of the park board here. But Martell Construction, or Martell, which is basically concrete, did get back to us on the overall costs for that. I asked Ryan to divide that up into two different areas, which you can kind of see on the two maps that are attached to your park board agenda. And the pricing actually came in better than I had thought. It looks like one section, if we did half of what needed to be done in terms of replacing the bricks, because a lot of the sand is shifting out, you know, and sinking out into the riprap somehow. So they'd be filling that in with riprap, with stone, and then concreting on top of it. That should solve that issue. We're looking at 41.5 for one section and 35,850 for the other section. Grand total of, you know, what, 77, a little over 77,000, looks like. Just trying to do quick math in my head, that might not be exactly right, but ballpark. So again, you just wanted me to bring that back, give you some of the pricing on that. So that pricing was just added in actually today to our capital improvement plan, which will be discussed at the village board level. Actually, it'll be discussed at a joint finance committee village board level coming up here in a couple of months.
Is this the only company that bid on that?
This isn't a bid, Mark. This is just like, what would it cost?
An estimate.
What would it cost to get the work done? So, you know, Martell is not saying they're the high or the low price leader. We're not bidding on it. We wouldn't officially be bidding or getting price quotes on it until 2026. We asked for a budget number, so we could put something into the 2026 budget for submittal, and that's what we got.
So Rex, the north piece is from the cul-de-sac all the way till it turns and starts going back towards the lake or towards the east, is that correct?
Well, again,
have
the
the maps.
first map looks like it's from roughly, you know, right by the clubhouse, looping around to where the red hash mark stops. And then part B would be where that red hash mark stops. And then looping around to basically where it ends at the east side of Mansell Flats. So those are the two individual sections that, and I asked them on purpose because I didn't know what the overall price is gonna be. I said, divide it in half. I said, this may be a project depending upon what dollars are allotted to us this year and whether this project is accepted as an improvement. We may need to divide it up and spread it out into 2 years, or could be all at once, depending upon, again, what dollars are available out there. So that's why there's two numbers
Right.
versus one overall number.
So the piece that would be continue east, so if you didn't take a right going southbound on by the apartments, is that in pretty good shape yet? Does that need any,
But the
I'm
piece
trying to think if there's
continuing
bricks.
east is really the pier.
Is it, so there's no bricks there, that's all just
No,
concrete
there's no
then?
bricks on the pier.
Okay, so
No
I was
bricks on
wondering.
the pier.
Okay, so this would take care of all the brick area that's out there? Okay. I'm surprised it's as inexpensive as it is myself, too. was
I am too.
shocked. Yeah,
I am too.
I mean, still a lot of money, but I thought it'd be a lot more than that.
Yeah, no, without getting into it, I thought it was a favorable
Yeah.
price quote.
Is there, I don't see it here, is there not any financial incentive to do it all at once from those guys?
Oh, there's certainly, I didn't ask them that. I just asked them to break it down into two.
Yeah, okay.
And so that's what the, I'm assuming this would be considered a public works type project, so we bid it out. And so,
Yeah.
the bids might come in more favorable if we were directed to do it all at once based off of these individual quotes. The bids might come in more favorable. I don't know.
Sure, okay.
All right, so it's more of a, there's no action needed on this, it was more of a bring it back to you guys, and here's what we're looking at cost-wise when we're submitting this.
Right. And then on a trail, we were waiting to see if there was other municipalities that were gonna maybe bear some responsibility for that cost to repair that. Is that right?
It was talked in an administrative meeting a month or two ago. That was going to be brought up. I don't know what the status of that is. I mean,
Yeah, okay.
Rex, maybe,
that's gonna take probably a little bit more finessing if we want it done sooner than later,
Okay.
just because it involves other municipalities.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
This is more of the low-lying fruit. It's here, it's ready to go.
Sure.
It's under our full control.
Rex, I see in the bid, they're not gonna, and I know this is just a quote, not keep the existing pavers. Do you think if we do this project that the pavers could be taken out and either sold or reused? Because some of them are in really good shape and they're nice looking. And maybe it's more of a pain, but, you know, maybe someone would want them and it'd be something we could sell or whatever, or we could use somewhere else or something.
It's a possibility, Tracy, but I'm gonna guess that doing so without damaging the pavers
Cost
upon
money.
removal would be labor intensive,
Yeah, you're right.
quite labor intensive,
Yeah, you're right.
which would probably increase the overall cost, and whether or not that outweighed the benefit of saving them and reselling them, I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
They're gonna come in with a skid steer and peel them all up and go,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Otherwise, it's take them all piece by piece, stack them up piece by piece, move
Yeah.
them piece.
Unfortunately, selling the Marina pure bricks might not have as much value
Oh, come on.
or reminiscence to people as like a piece of the Lambeau Field sod when they resod it.
What if we move the
You pay
pallet?
$25 to get a little box full of dirt.
Let's move the pallet to Lambeau and then sell them there.
Yeah.
All right, information only. Anybody got anything else?
No, I just say as we continue to expand that trail and, you know, we have a defect here that's gonna, in the future, need to be done. And if there's funds for it, I would support it, getting it done, getting it concrete. Then if there's future erosion, you can take a piece out and rectify just an area rather than, you can't just fix a small area of paver. You have to peel back a lot to get it done. So, I mean, if there's funding next year for it, I would support moving forward to make that as we expand that trail, so.
I walked that trail this morning and it definitely needs to be redone. The pavers are giving away,
Yeah.
so.
All right, moving on. C, consider, discuss, act on a request to install fencing for the cricket field at the Ashwaubenon Sports Complex.
Okay, so this initial item was brought up 2 months ago by Park Board member Donovan. We talked a little bit about it last month, and then Park Board requested a little bit more information to be brought back to them, either from Donovan or a representative from the cricket group, which we have here this evening. The concern that was initially brought up was that when the game is being played at our field, there's in the northeast corner of the field to Layden, there's a cornfield, and the village owns that. We rent it out as farmland, but it's probably 8 to 10 feet tall corn, and if you've ever been in a cornfield, it's pretty thick, hard to get in there, and what they were finding is that they were losing balls and they were not able to find some of the balls that are in there. So one of the things that we were looking at is what could we do to help that out a little bit? So whether it's a temporary fence, whether it's permanent fencing, whether it's permanent netting, and then there's other issues that crop up when the village does have some type of development they want for that field. Are we going to be able to keep the fence? Or are we gonna have to tear it out, which we don't wanna have to do because you know, that could happen in a year, or that could happen in 10 years. And then what's the value of what we spent on that? So there's a couple things to talk about. So what I'd like to do is bring up our representative. So what you can do, just state, if you could state your name and your address, and then you can tell your story about the cricket field.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, this is Sankar. I'm representing GPCA, Green Bay Cricket Association. And then, like Rex mentioned, this year we have been finding it very difficult with the cornfield because balls get hit in that area.
If you could say, I gotta state your address on there.
Oh, address?
Yeah, gotta say
okay.
what your address is.
Yeah, I just need to check that 1 second. Sorry about that.
We just need that for the record.
Oh, okay, got it, okay.
Or on your
I don't remember.
driver's license or anything.
Oh, yeah, actually, my address is 936 Pilgrim Way, apartment 11, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Ashwaubenon district.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you.
Yeah. Continuing to the cornfield, this year we have been facing a lot of challenges in getting the ball because the players hit hard. Sometimes the ball lands directly into the cornfield, and sometimes it just rolls over. We lose the ball, and most of the times we play in the evenings, and it gets darker soon. So in some occasions, we wouldn't be able to complete the game because of that. Players had to come back again. So that's the main challenge. If you could install something that could block these balls, much appreciated.
For the balls that go in the cornfield, what would be the approximate height of the ball entering the cornfield?
Yeah, so sometimes it rolls over, sometimes it just, if the player hits very hard, it directly lands into the cornfield. I was just checking the stats, 20-30% of the balls roll over, but remaining the balls get hit directly into the field.
So they're going over on the fly. If they're going over on the fly, how deep are they going into the field?
Cannot go, based on my experience, 10 to 15 rows from the corner of the cornfield. Yeah.
And how
Not
often?
more than that. Yeah.
Okay. How often does that happen per game, usually?
Usually 10 times.
Okay.
Yeah. At least 10 times.
Okay.
How high would you need a fence in order to prevent the balls from going in?
How high?
How high would the fence have to be?
I think it would help if you have something like in the baseball field. If you could install something like that, that could save the balls. Or for temporary purpose, some fence, that would help also to keep the ball rolling over into the field.
So I've been stewing on this a little bit, just in terms of, again, and I have not talked this over with administration, but I'm going to guess the concern is, again, if that cornfield gets developed, what we have there may or may not be able to stay. And then, so what's your return on investment on putting some kind of fence there? That being said, what could we do to help out? And, we bought a fair amount of safety fencing, which is about 4 feet tall. You see it around our playground equipment, and stuff like that. We could probably, and we have that still from when we bought it from the draft. We kind of fenced off a couple of parks to prevent cars from going onto the parks. We could, as an option, is to see how it works, and then get some feedback from the Cricket Association. We could put that up just with tree stakes, zip tie that up, and at the very least it would
Stop the
it
roller.
would stop the balls from rolling in there. And then obviously it's got a little bit of height, not much, but at least we'd be able to try it out and knock that down a little bit in terms of the amount of balls going into the cornfield. Once you start going up higher than that, you know, if you need to go up 10 feet or 15 feet, now you're talking either netting or chain link, and you're probably, for the distance that's needed, we're probably, I mean, I'm just gonna guess, probably talking a minimum of 10, probably closer to 15 to 25,000 for netting and or chain link and having the posts put in and doing that. So I think, I don't wanna, I'm just suggesting, you know, to start out with the safety fencing is an option to, maybe that's something we could discuss and see what you guys think about that.
Rex, we have enough fencing to cover 292 feet?
If not, the fencing is fairly cheap, Dean, it is probably about $75 to $100 a roll.
I priced it out.
I think we do, but I know Ron had
I priced it out for 300 feet, and I came up with $483. That was 75 6-foot T stakes. So if you sink them into the ground 2 feet, you have 4 feet left over for the fencing. And then I priced it out for 300 feet of, I think it was polyethylene netting.
and we have that in stock that we only use for the draft. It's still in really good shape.
Yeah, but this was orange construction color.
The question I'd have is, if we're renting the land for a cornfield, if we,
We own the land.
okay,
The
if we,
village already owns it, and we rent it to a farmer who's farming it until the village comes up with a potential development that makes it
Right.
worthwhile.
so are we getting, I don't know what we're getting per acre for renting it to them, but what happens if we take an acre behind this area? He's saying their balls go in 10 feet. Let's keep an acre of it clear behind there, so if it goes in, they can find it.
Yeah, or a certain distance, yeah.
It would be possible to do that. I don't get involved with the rental, the field rental, because it's village property, so that's done through the village attorney's office. I will say that there would need to be additional costs, because if you're getting rid of the corn, now you're needing to make that something other than just a corn field, basically. You know, so we would need to bring in, similar to how we had to redo the whole, because the cricket field that's there right now used to be a cornfield.
Yeah.
And I think we probably spent 25,000 at least out of Park Development Fund on top of a $5,000 grant from WPS, Wisconsin Public Service, to bring in additional dirt, to level that field, to grade it, then to seed it. So if I guess maybe we wouldn't have to do that, but I mean, if we're going to increase that field to make it playable, then we'd probably need to do something similar to any additional ground that we pushed to the east.
I'm not looking to make something that's playable.
Yeah.
I'm looking to make something that they can walk into and get a
Get their
ball.
balls. Yeah.
And that's something that I could bring up to administration. That's not my field per se, that's the
Yeah,
village's
that's
field. as well.
fine.
But I understand that thought.
Yeah, and maybe you don't need a full acre, but maybe you go another, I don't know, 100 feet from the 290-foot length that they have and not allow corn to be put in there. And maybe that's enough space that then their balls go in there, they can see them, they can walk over and get them. So I think that's a good thing, and maybe it won't be that big a deal with the farmer to push them back 100 feet or whatever the heck it would be.
And that could be a good solution if it is to be developed
Right.
later and we put up a fence and it has to be removed, or we develop it and we have to put up a fence or move the fence because of the development or whatever. Maybe
Yep.
that's a quick it's a next year solution, obviously,
Right.
but
Just try it and see how it goes, and, you know, maybe it works, and then you don't have to put any kind of fence, even a temporary, and,
Because it involves revenue that our department, I don't wanna say controls, but
Yep.
we don't control it. I mean, that option will need to go to village board, because that's going to then, you know, take money away from another department or another revenue source. Just FYI, this is what the process will need to be
Yep.
to do that option.
It's certainly
And
worth.
I don't mind doing it, I'm just letting you know what the process is.
It's certainly worth looking into, and I agree with what Tracy was saying, building on what Ron came up with, is that maybe it doesn't have to be a whole acre. What's the amount of space? It's certainly worth finding out what the cost loss would be if that were to happen, and if it's feasible, because it is the simplest solution.
Well, if I
The-
could just ask a real quick question for clarification. So there's the cricket field at Cornerstone is encroached, if you will, or surrounded by agricultural fields to the north. There's a field that runs immediately adjacent to the west that runs the full length of the cricket field. And then to the east, there's an apartment complex, and then there's another agricultural field just to the north of that. So on the east side of the cricket area, that's kind of split evenly, if you will, between the apartment complex and where the agricultural field is. The field to the north and the field to the west is not owned or managed by the village. Those are owned by the airport. Half of that field, or half of that area to the east, that agricultural area, is managed or owned by the village and leased. So if we're looking at asking or requesting to expand an area of non-agricultural use, we only have the ability to control the area to the northeast of the cricket field.
Right? And
Any of the other surrounding land uses are owned by Brown County Airport.
And I think that's what the request is.
Yeah.
is that-
Okay,
that-
I just want clarification that it's
Yep,
just
that-
that
It's
section.
that area between the apartment buildings that are there and Waterford Heights.
That's where most
So
of
that's where the balls are going, in
most
that
of them.
area. Is that
They
correct,
do
sir?
go out. They
Yes.
do go out the other way to the west, but not as frequent, if I'm correct.
Right.
Most of the sixes.
Yeah,
right.
sixes.
Most of the sixes go out over the northeast corner from the pole structure,
From the pitch.
and then, the pitch and the pole to the north there. Which, when I talked with Raju, he said, ideally, maybe half of that field would have something to stop the ball, because most of them go out in that pocket right where the corn starts, and then some go out further, but the majority of the balls go out in that area.
And we do not need the fencing all the way till the end of the
Right.
cornfield, because the balls are not going to go there. Just between the 22-yard field, if you could install fencing, that would be much time saver.
Does the cricket field cover the whole area from east to west on that field? Because
Most of it.
if there's more field than what the cricket area requires for their own field, could you not move the cricket field more to the west so you have more of a buffer on the east side where the cornfield is?
We have the concrete pitch where the bowler pulls the ball.
In the middle.
Batsman hits the ball. So that has to be moved out also.
Yeah.
So the pitch is centered
It's centered.
with
Yeah.
the usable
Okay.
field that we have right now. To the south, and we haven't even talked about it, but to the south, in between the cricket field and the softball fields is actually a wetland area. That's where you see a lot of the cattails and whatnot growing up in there, so that can't be touched. So the field is centered as best as it can be right now, Dean.
Okay.
And then you use it frequently, correct? I mean, it's used not every day, but most days, right?
Yeah, most days.
And it sounds like you have a youth league as well, a youth division, so I
Women's
mean,
league, yeah.
it's well used, which is great, which means that something that we put into place is,
So to clarify, how much more field do you think would be needed distance-wise? And, how many feet would we need to push in, or not have corn planted there? How deep would we
Yeah,
need to go?
so from the center of the pitch, we.
Not worrying
mark-
about the pitch, I'm looking for like
Yeah,
where
yeah,
the
I
cornfield
get that.
starts in,
Yeah, I get it. That's where I'm going. So from the center of the pitch, we mark our boundaries like 55 yards, 60 yards. So that's almost the edge of the field. And then if you could extend like 25, 30 yards more, that would.
25 or 30 feet or yards?
Yards.
yards.
Yeah.
So we're talking 75
Yeah,
feet.
so, yeah.
Okay.
Rex, on a separate note, do we charge a rental fee for that field?
We don't. It's just been a service that when we put that in, it's just like a open field or an open park where people, there's not a lot of maintenance other than the mowing that we do. We don't charge for the use of it. That was discussed when we put that in 2015, I think.
So Raju, is that how you pronounce your name?
No,
Is that-
that's a guy I work with, yeah.
Oh, okay. So if we did keep the corn away, like 75 feet is what you were saying, do you think that would work for you to be able to not lose the balls, or do you think you still would prefer a fence there?
I think that would help because, there's so much power a player can generate to hit the ball.
Yeah.
So I don't think the ball could go farther from there. That's my guess.
Okay.
I can check that again and get back to Rex.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even if you would try it next year maybe and see how it works for you,
Sure.
if we can do that with our rental agreement, then let us know or let Rex know, well, we're good, or we really do need a fence in this area or that area or whatever. Then we can revisit it maybe after you try it for a year.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. Thank you.
That's a good idea. So do we need a,
No, I think this,
Do we have if we were to put up a temporary fence, you have the supplies that you could do that for the rest of the season? Because you have a fall league too, right?
Yeah.
Is that something that could be done yet for the fall season?
It could be. Yeah.
Then at least for the continuation of this year, that could stop that, and then we have a little time for next year. I don't know. That's
just thinking ahead a little bit, maybe for your benefit, we'll try these other things and hopefully they work. Because we want to make it work for you. It gets used enough. If we do in the future end up building some kind of a more permanent fence, I guess my thought would be, you guys would need some skin in the game, fundraising or something to help offset any cost we would have for a more of a permanent fence.
Sure.
If we just built it, obviously, like what Rex said before, we don't know how long it's gonna be up, first of all. Second of all, we'll have every other group in the area wanting us to throw up free fences. So, just something for discussion for you guys.
Sure.
Maybe in the future, you
we will look
might wanna consider doing some fundraising if we get to that point.
Okay, sure. We will look into that. Thank you.
okay, I'd make a motion, I don't know if we need one or not, but for the rest of this year, to try putting that fence up and see how that works for them to make it through this year. And then next year, we would ask the administrative staff to look at the rental agreement for the farmer and see if we can move it back 75 feet and try that and see how that works.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for, what Tracy just proposed. Does everybody understand that?
yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Absolutely.
All right, items for next agenda.
I just want to touch on a little bit what Ron had said about our meeting minutes. So our last meeting minutes in there, it did talking about the Packerland Path and the Sherwood Forest Porta Potty. My understanding with the Sherwood Forest Porta Potty is that this park board had to approve putting that in there, or did I misunderstand that when we discussed it at our last meeting? And then you're saying you're just going to put it in the budget and put one in there, but there,
Sounds like it was approved. Everyone wanted it at the last meeting.
but
So
it wasn't on the agenda, was it? It wasn't on the agenda, and we just I think it
I
came
think
up
you're right.
later in the meeting, maybe Nancy brought it up or
I
something.
brought it up to come on the agenda for this
Yeah,
meeting.
I don't, again, and we can get into the minutia with a lot of the stuff that we do, but to me, this is not an issue or item that needed to be an agenda item. It's just something, that made sense. Hey, we need an extra porta potty over here. I'll propose it in the budget and there we go. I don't think we need to, for a single porta potty, need to make it an additional agenda item, which is why I did it. I can make it one, Tracy, if.
No, I don't care either way, Rex, but like I said, maybe I misunderstood, but I thought there were some concerns, like the park board in the past had said, no, we're not putting one there. And that's why it was not there. So that was why I thought it needed to come back to park board to say yes and re-look at it. But maybe I misunderstood that. I don't know. That's why I was surprised that it wasn't on here. But like I said, maybe I misunderstood that, you guys will.
I would have to agree with Tracy on it.
Yeah,
That's the reason we had the item for agenda.
We can bring it back as an agenda item.
That would probably be the proper thing to do, because it sounds like it's moving on kind of on its own,
yeah. I mean, I think it's a good idea, but there seemed like there was some
I'll
consternation
support it.
for it, so I don't know.
But to do it the right way, we probably should
Yeah.
have an agenda item on it.
And then the Packerland Path was on there too, if we can at least, it's probably not gonna get in the budget anymore, but at least to have an informational presentation on what's ours, what's Hobart's, or I think it's Hobart, and what's what.
That was not on there, because quite honestly, we're slammed with projects right now, and we haven't even started to make phone calls yet to other agencies, or who's gonna make them, or what information was already received. So
And that's fine, just
certain
maybe you
stuff
can
I
come
do,
back when you have time.
can't do
And
more than I can't, I'm sorry.
yeah, I understand that, but maybe just put it on when you guys can have a chance to see what, so maybe 2027, we look at it again, or whatever, but just to,
As long as it's on the radar somewhere.
right, yeah.
Might just add for staff, if there are things that are future agenda items, and if they, for that reason that Rex had described, just based on workload and capacity to prepare the item thoughtfully for the committee, just indicate that on the staff report. So if you don't see something on the agenda specifically, look for it in the staff report, and maybe it'll just be a simple statement. Due to present workload, we were unable to prepare that agenda item for the board's consideration this month, but it will come forward when it's ready. That way it's at least documented, and that staff hasn't forgotten about whatever that issue is that you wish to address.
It's an excellent suggestion.
Yeah. Yeah, then we know, where it's at too. The only other thing that if we could put on a future agenda is our non-resident fees. We talked about that a little bit with our co-sponsored and the $15, and we were gonna remain at 15 for that year, but I thought we were suggested to look at that as well with other communities, what the non-resident fee is like for programs and for everything else. So maybe if we could put that on in the future and agenda when you have a chance to look at that and see if we need to raise our non-resident fees for all of our programs up a little bit. Again, when you have a chance, and you can come back.
In your spare time.
Yeah, exactly.
Your spare time, yeah. Okay, anything else? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So
Mo-
moved.
Second.
We have a motion, and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.